In this video, I'm going to be reviewing the Maiora Alpha Fountain Pen. I'll go over the specs, I will do a writing sample, and I'll tell you what I like and don't like about this pen coming up. Blake here with Blake's Broadcast. On this channel, I review fountain pens, paper, and ink, and as always, I put links in the show notes in the description below. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, it really helps out my channel. Alright, let's get on with the review. This pen is the Maiora Alpha Fountain Pen. This is the first Maiora fountain pen I've ever had, and this is produced by one of the ex-Delta employees or owners. Apparently there were two of them, and they split apart to make another company also, Leonardo, and boy are these pens insanely similar. So I don't really understand exactly why these are so similar. When I'm looking at these, I feel like they're made in the same place by the same people. So if you guys know about how these two pens are related, please let me know. But my understanding is that they're two different ex-Delta employees. Delta was a Italian brand that went out of business. They were most famous for their Dolce Vita fountain pen, which is a fountain pen that I would like to have at some point in my collection, especially the oversized one in sort of the black and orange body. That was always a pen I wanted when I was a kid, and the price is just was way too much for me. But anyway, this pen kind of has some of those Dolce Vita-y looks, especially around the cap ring here. And then of course you have the very Italian roller clip, which a lot of Italian pens have, going back to, I want to say even maybe before the 30s. Certainly I have 1930s Omases with roller clips, and just a very Italian feature. In terms of the design of this pen, it's definitely more squarish. It kind of reminds me of a Optima. However, you have these, well, and it reminds me of a Delta Dolce Vita. I mean, obviously that's probably the better comparison. So it's a pretty fat pen. You have these pointed funnel shaped ends here. The material of this pen is resin. It's kind of this stacked resin. It's not my favorite. Now, I got this pen for, I think, $125 new. Retail price on this with the steel nib is $295. That's a lot of money for this pen, especially when the nib is as disappointing as the nib is on this pen. So we'll get into that in a minute. But walking through the design, again, we have that stacked resin, which I don't think is the most attractive, especially in this Oroblu color. It's very dark in places, and then like in two spots, they're bright. It's just kind of weird. It's like, I think it would have been cooler if the bright parts were kind of more evenly dispersed, not just, okay, here's the bright section and here's the bright section again. It doesn't look great. Now in the lighter colors, they get away with that, I think, a little bit more easily, but not my favorite. On the back here, or actually I guess we can go to the clip. Again, it's an Italian roller clip. This clip does not roll very nicely. In my use, when I put it, and I'm not someone that uses a clip, so take what I say with a grain of salt here, but in my testing with this, it doesn't really roll really easily. And when I lift it off the pen, like right now, and try to roll it with my finger, it doesn't move. So not a very good roller clip, I would say. Finish, I don't really have any complaints about the finish of this clip. The metal furniture on this, with the exception of the nib, is pretty good. On the back here, we have an engraving that says Maiora, Italy, and then we have down here, it says Oroblu, which is the color of this pen, gold blue, and 0153. And I'm not sure if that's a serial number or just the model number of this particular pen. I have a feeling that's just the model number. Otherwise, this is a pretty low production pen here. We have three cap rings. The middle ring is pretty interesting. This is gold-plated sterling silver. So if we look here, you can see there's sort of a 925 hallmark there. And very pretty pattern here. This is, I think, the nicest part of the pen. It looks really good. And when we compare it to a Leonardo, which has this interwoven design, this really stands out as being superior, in my opinion. Looks-wise, this is obviously personal preference. And then we have two nice rings on the body here, which are kind of rounded. Has a nice high-quality look to it. Now this pen is a cartridge converter pen. It takes standard cartridge converter, we have a Jowo nib. This nib, I'm going to say this is my fault. I used an ink that I hadn't used before, which is called Platinum Citrus Black. And this is an iron gall ink. And because this is an extra fine, it was taking forever to run out. And in the time that I was using it, the nib basically lost plating. And I'm assuming it's because of that ink. And now, I have not used that ink and that was the first time of me using that ink. So I'm gonna blame that on the ink because I've used many Jowo nibs and I've never had any problems with plating issues. So that's my fault. The nib here, it's a number 6 Jowo nib. It's pretty unpleasant looking. I think that the laser engraving here looks really cheap. I'm very curious to know if they do this at the factory or if this is a third-party thing because the Jowo nibs like on a Jowo or a Twisby look really, really nice, and this just looks cheap. Now, these pens do come as an option in a gold nib. I believe that adds something like $300 or maybe more to the price, and those have a nicer engraving in them. But for $300, I think it should look better than this. I like Jowo nibs. This is an extremely scratchy extra fine. If you're not careful with it, it will tear up paper. So I think I just got a bad one here. Plastic feed. They are threaded, so you can remove them. Very scratchy nibs, so quality control there, not the highest, not what I would expect for $300. You have a pretty substantial looking O-ring here. I have heard that you can use this as an eyedropper. I would not do that because you have no way of controlling the airflow because this is closed once it's on there. Cartridge converter is standard international. It does come with a threaded converter, which is nice, and it should for $300. Yeah, let's do some measurements. So about 145, about 132 uncapped and posted. This does post quite nicely and securely. About 165. So quite a big pen. I do find that it's comfortable to write with the cap, but there is significant weight added to the pen when you do that. Let's do the grip section because this does have a really nice grip section. 13.3 at the back, and then it kind of tapers towards about right here before flaring back out. 12.1, so very fat grip section. Now, I did have a request to do the body of the pen, so I'll try to find roughly the fattest part there, 15 millimeters. So it's a very wide pen. And I'll do some comparisons with some other pens here in a minute. 28 grams and 15 grams uncapped. Now, the weight there actually feels a little bit lighter than I was expected. This has a very substantial feel to it, but it's also quite comfortable. Now, it's not as comfortable as an Aurora. This is an Aurora Optima, you know, one of my all-time favorite pens. You can see how much bigger this is. A much bigger pen. I mean, pretty substantial difference there. The Aurora is, I guess, what, 5 grams lighter, 6 grams lighter. You can really feel a difference between these. I do think that this is quite comfortable. This is just even more comfortable. And it surprises me that the weight difference is pretty small there. But I do like the big grip section. If you have bigger hands, this is a really nice pen. Other size comparisons here, so that's the Aurora Optima. Here is a 3776 in sterling silver, and here is a Pilot or Namiki Vanishing Point, the older version, just so you can see it with some other pens there. This is a big, chunky pen, and then just compared to the Leonardo, this is called the Mosaico, which is even bigger. Big pens from these companies. Okay, let's do the writing sample. So, going to be doing the writing sample on a Papermind Mitsubishi bank paper notebook. These notebooks are really excellent with fountain pens, and for Blake's Broadcast viewers and subscribers, you can use code BB10 at checkout to get 10% off. Okay, so this is the Maiora Alpha, and this is an extra fine, and this is Diamine Blue Black. Let's see here. Try fast writing. Okay, so interestingly, I'm writing on this bank paper notebook, and this already feels much smoother than on some of the laid paper I have been writing with this on. I was also using a binderwerk notebook, which has not as dense of a paper as this Mitsubishi bank paper. And on this bank paper, it is significantly smoother. So the paper with this extra fine nib, I think, really does matter. There still is some toothiness to it, but I'm not chewing up the paper like I was with my binderwerk notebook that I was using. And just as a comparison here, yeah, there's no bleeding, so it really does matter the type of paper that you use. In terms of flexibility, there's a little bit, a decent amount of a bounce there. Reverse writing, yeah, it's a little bit more toothy than the other toothier side, but there's not a huge difference in width there. So performance, it's toothy. It can be scratchy on some papers, very paper dependent. No skipping here. Otherwise, a reliable Jowo nib. If I were to do it again, though, I would go with a medium. So what are my pros and cons for the Maiora Alpha Fountain Pen? Well, I think it's quite a good looking pen. I especially like this gold-plated sterling silver ring here. I think it's very distinctive. It has a very Italian look. I do like the engravings on the back that say Maiora, Italy. It also has an engraving with the color, Oroblu, and the number, which I think is a model number. Pretty good looking pen, and it's a very comfortable pen because it is full-sized, and you do have a very thick grip section. So I really like all of that. In terms of cons, the price. $295 for a steel nib pen and a pretty unpleasant looking nib. I don't like that. That's going to be the biggest drawback for me. I think the build quality of the pen feels nice, but it's really let down by this nib. Now this is the number 6 Jowo nib, so it is a good sized nib, but it has very cheap looking like laser engraving on there, and it doesn't match the quality of, well, like for instance a Jowo or a TWSBI Jowo nib. Those nibs have strong, crisp impressions. And so, I don't know what the story is with these laser engravings. Does Jowo do this in the factory and it's just a way cheaper option? Or is this done third party with a different kind of machine? I'm really curious, to be honest. But anyway, doesn't look great. Now, I did damage the finish on that. I'm just going to say that's my fault, using a platinum citrus black ink. It's an ink I haven't used before, so I'm going to lay that on the ink, not the pen. But I also am not a huge fan of this material. It is a acrylic, kind of a mosaic look. There are a couple of like bright areas, and then the rest of it's pretty dark. It does look better in some lighter colors. Still, I probably wouldn't pick this again. The reason I selected this one is that I got it for, I think, around $125, and I was very curious about the brand, but probably wouldn't pick that again. Other con, going back to the nib, very scratchy nib to the point where I'll probably replace the nib, but if you're getting one of these, I think I would probably recommend going medium or up, just so if you want to make some adjustments, it's a little bit easier to do with those wider nibs. That's pretty much it. Do you guys have this pen? Do you like this pen? Let me know in the comment section below, and if you like this video, please hit that like button, and if you want to see more fountain pen paper and ink videos, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much, and until next time.